For 6 years, a woman named Hannah had not spoken a single word. She could hear perfectly, she understood everything, but after the accident that took her husband, the words simply stopped coming. It had happened on a rainy night in March, a two-car collision that ended everything in seconds. Hannah had survived with barely a scratch, and somehow that was the cruelest part. She had walked away from the wreck, and 3 days later at the funeral, she opened her mouth to speak and found that nothing came out at all. Doctors called it selective mucism, brought on by trauma, and for 6 long years, through 2 therapists and dozens of appointments, nothing reached past that silence. Then, a 200-pound Boerboel that nobody at the shelter believed would ever be adopted rested his enormous head in her lap, and what happened next left an entire room of people in tears. His name was Titus, a 200-pound Boerboel with a fawn coat, a black mask across his face, and a body so massive most people crossed the parking lot to avoid him. He had been at the shelter in Asheville, North Carolina for 289 days, kennel 8 in the back. He was 5 years old, 200 pounds, surrendered by a family who said he was simply too big to manage. And in almost a year, not one person had asked to even walk him. He was the dog everyone photographed for the website, and no one ever came back for. Titus had come to the shelter after his family moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that did not allow dogs over 40 pounds. They left him with a single worn tennis ball, 1 chewed blanket, and a note that said he was a good boy, but simply too much house to keep. For the first 30 days, Titus would not eat unless a volunteer sat beside him. The staff adored him. They took turns walking Titus at closing time so he would not spend every night alone. And the same dog that terrified strangers would roll onto his back for a belly rub the moment he trusted you. But 289 days is a long time to wait, and hope, even for a dog, wears thin. Hannah Brooks was 34 years old, and she had not chosen to come to the shelter that day. Her younger sister, Claire, 4 years younger, had all but dragged her out of the apartment she rarely left anymore. For 6 years, Claire had watched Hannah fade, watched her write everything on a small notepad she carried everywhere, watched the light go out of a sister who had once never stopped talking. Claire had read that time around animals could help people locked inside trauma, and she was desperate enough to try anything. They walked the aisles slowly, past 40-odd kennels, Hannah trailing behind, her notepad clutched to her chest like a shield. She did not want to be there. She flinched at the barking, kept her eyes on the floor, and counted the 10 minutes until she could leave. Then they reached the very last kennel, the one at the end where the light was dim, and inside sat the largest dog Hannah had ever seen, easily 200 pounds. Titus did not bark, he did not jump. He simply lifted his massive head and looked at her with deep brown eyes that held the same quiet ache she carried inside herself. A volunteer named Marcus was walking past and slowed down when he saw Hannah stop. "That's Titus," he said gently. "Biggest softie in the building, but people take one look at 200 pounds of Boerboel and keep walking. He's been here almost a year." Hannah did not respond, of course, she never did, but she did something she had not done in a very long time. She stepped closer to the kennel instead of backing away. Claire held her breath, afraid that any word from her would break whatever was happening. Marcus, sensing something, quietly asked if Hannah would like to sit with him in the visiting room. Hannah hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. They brought Titus in, all 200 pounds of him, and he moved with a slow, careful gentleness, as though he understood that the woman in front of him was fragile. Hannah lowered herself onto the floor, and the enormous Boerboel walked over, circled once, and rested his gigantic head directly in her lap, letting out a long, low sigh. Hannah went completely still. For 6 years, she had built her whole life around not being touched, around keeping a careful distance from a world that had hurt her too badly. But Titus asked for nothing. He did not need her to speak or explain or be okay. He simply rested all 200 pounds of himself against her, as if he had decided in that instant that she was his. For 6 years, Hannah had not let anyone truly touch her. She flinched from hugs. She kept the world at the length of a notepad. But something about the weight of that huge head in her lap, the warmth of it, the trust in it, undid something she had kept locked for 6 years. Her hand, trembling, came to rest on Titus's massive skull, and she began, silently, to cry. Claire pressed both hands over her mouth. Marcus turned away to wipe his eyes, and the same dog nobody had wanted for 289 days did not move a muscle, holding perfectly still, letting her hold on. No one said a word, because words would have broken it. I know you haven't subscribed, and I'd never pressure you, but stories like Hannah's are why this channel exists. If it touched you, tap subscribe. Hannah adopted Titus that same afternoon. She wrote 3 words on her notepad and turned it so Marcus could read them. He chose me. Marcus had to step into the back office so no one would see him break down. When Hannah walked out with 200 pounds of Boerboel at her side, Claire later said it was the first time in 6 years she had seen her sister's shoulders lift, the first time she walked like someone with somewhere to be. The first weeks at home were a quiet revolution. Titus followed Hannah room to room, never crowding, always near. He learned her routines within 4 days. When she sat with her coffee, he lay across her feet. When she wrote in her notepad, he rested his chin on the table and watched. And at night, when the old nightmares came and Hannah woke gasping in the dark, she would find 200 pounds of warm, breathing Boerboel already pressed against her side, reminding her she was not alone. She began to sleep through the night for the first time in years. She had gone 6 years on maybe 3 hours of broken sleep, jolting awake at every sound. But the steady rhythm of 200 pounds of Boerboel breathing beside her did what no prescription ever had. Within 2 weeks, she was sleeping 6, sometimes 7 hours, waking not to panic, but to a giant head on the mattress, waiting for her to open her eyes. Something began to shift in Hannah that no therapy in 6 years had managed. She started leaving the apartment again because Titus needed his walks and gazed at the door with such hope she could not refuse him. Neighbors who had never once seen her began to wave. And slowly, in the safe company of a dog who asked nothing of her, the pressure that had sealed Hannah's voice shut for 6 years began almost imperceptibly to ease. The same Titus that 289 days of families had rejected had become the one who was gently pulling Hannah back into the world. She began to hum sometimes, without noticing, when she brushed his coat. She moved her lips silently as she read to him in the evenings, the words right there, just below the surface. Claire noticed and said nothing, terrified of shattering it. Everyone who knew Hannah could feel that something enormous was building, quietly, one day at a time. Claire started keeping track in a small way, the way you note the first warm days of spring. In week 2, Hannah laughed out loud, a short, startled sound, when Titus sneezed and knocked over a stack of books. In week 6, she mouthed a full sentence to him with no sound but perfect shape. By week 12, Claire heard, through the door, the faintest whisper of a word. The same Titus that 289 days of families had passed over sat at the center of every one of those tiny miracles. 200 pounds of patience, giving everything. The moment no one would ever forget came on a freezing night in December, almost 5 months after the adoption. A faulty heater had begun leaking carbon monoxide into the apartment while Hannah slept. She did not wake, but Titus did. The same dog everyone had called too big began to bark, louder and more frantic than Hannah had ever heard. And when barking did not wake her, he grabbed her sleeve in his jaws and pulled her clean off the bed. Hannah woke, dizzy, disoriented, her head pounding, and she understood at once that something was terribly wrong. Titus was pushing her toward the door with his whole body, not stopping. And then, in the dark of that poisoned apartment, with her life on the line and no notepad in her hand, Hannah Brooks opened her mouth. And for the first time in 6 years, a sound came out. She screamed one word, the only word that mattered, loud enough to wake her neighbor through the wall. Help. The neighbor called 911. The firefighters said that another 10 minutes, maybe 15, and neither Hannah nor Titus would have survived. But it was not just the carbon monoxide they marveled at. It was the woman on the curb, wrapped in a blanket, talking. Her voice cracked and rusty and shaking, but there, pouring out 6 years of silence, with her arms wrapped around a 200-pound Boerboel who had saved her life twice, once from her grief and once from the dark. The paramedics checked her over 3 times, certain the shock would steal her voice again. It did not. She kept talking. To them, to Claire, to Titus, as if 6 years of words all wanted out at once. Hannah's voice did not disappear again. It came back slowly, word by careful word over the following 8 months, and her therapist said the trauma of that night, survived beside a creature she utterly trusted, had broken the dam that 6 years of treatment could not. The same dog nobody wanted had given Hannah back the one thing everyone thought was gone forever, which was her own voice. Today, Hannah is 35, and she talks every single day, mostly to Titus, who is now 6, and still sleeps pressed against her side all 7 nights a week. She still keeps her old notepad in a drawer, not because she needs it, but to remember how far she's come. Titus still rests his huge head in her lap each evening, and the apartment that was silent for 6 years is finally, gloriously, full of a woman's voice.